do you think of this, Ray?
I think this is the greatest brass Congress I've ever been to.
How about Ebbs in there?
Wow, absolutely phenomenal.
That's phenomenal. You
Yes,
guys are
sir.
terrific.
The number of distinguished people around this Congress
From
The only
all over
problem,
the world.
we can't recognize this SOB because of his shades.
Du,
That's very smart. No, that's very good.
For a little fellow who is somewhat overweight. If Shelley would take off 20 pounds, he would move over the 5,000 milliliter mark. He'd have in excess of 5 liters. Now, with a little training, he probably would even right now. Is there somebody up there that would like to try this? Do we? I don't know whether, I'm past 12 o'clock. I don't know whether to stop now or go on. Keep going. The little lady that was here a moment ago, would you come up and let's measure your lung capacity with this. I like the more sophisticated spirometric units for measuring lung volumes. They're more accurate, but this is reasonably close. And I just want to, you to get a difference between small and large. Would you mind? This is like a kiss by proxy, so I hope you like them. Would you take a huge breath? Now what you have to do is inhale. You inhale as though you're going to swim. The idea, you think of swimming underwater for 2 lengths of a good-sized swimming pool. When you breathe in, just continuous inhalation. You blow up like a giant balloon. And then you send it in where we would measure velocity and quantity, so both aspects are being measured. Would you think of the swimming pool now and yawn, and then put this inside your mouth so the tongue cannot occlude the port. And then fast as you can blow. It's like a siren. Make a lot of noise. Bravo. This is better than mine. I can tell by the pitch. Absolutely. 3,590 milliliters, which is excellent. You're only about 5'1". You're not even, now this is marvelous, but see the somatotype of the individual is involved. It has to do with the length of the torso, length of the legs, weight, and age. You're how old? 18. Well, that's wonderful. Is there anybody here about 6'2", 3 or 4 that would like to do this? Please. 6 foot is good enough. Thank you very much. Again, take a preliminary breath for me, just so I can look at you.
You want to tell me about this first?
No, leave that alone. Take a big yawn. Just, in other words, this is not music. Forget about right or wrong. Forget about formula and breathing. Just take in all the air so you create a vacuum in the room, and then move it through here. You understand? Then you run it through here as fast as you can, but put this far enough in the mouth that you cannot occlude the port with your tongue. Don't breathe through that. Room air first. Then it's one way into that. Now, he did beautifully, but he didn't take a full breath. He still has more than this. Whatever this is, you have much more. Well, now, this is 3,700 milliliters. I do almost that well. I know it. You see, your lungs go this high in the body. They go right up to the clavicles. In other words, in the complete capacity breath, there will never be a complete breath without movement of this particular region. Don't be afraid to move it. You're not playing. You know what I mean? Yeah, I want you to try it again, but this time I want a real breath. Give me your hand. Put it over here. I have fun teaching. Can you sense the movement of the sternum? Now, there is no complete breaths without sternal movement. There are no complete breaths without. Can you feel the diaphragmatic descent, displacement? There are no complete breaths without the bellows expanding in all planes as far as it can. Now, I don't want you to think so much in terms of the meat. I want you to think in terms of the air. Blow your breath out. Wait till you turn blue, and then inhale. Take a mighty inhalation and try to break it. Still not a complete breath. You better come and see me in Chicago.
How much?
Now, this time it was only 3,500 milliliters. I can tell by looking at this gentleman that he has well over 5 liters. Now, he is not taking it, which means there has been a prior conditioning to where he is using limit. He could probably be the best player in the world. It wouldn't matter. In other words, he's got more than enough for what he's trying to accomplish. But somewhere there is a block, and I know where it is, simply he is expanding to breathe where he should be breathing to expand. In other words, he is creating a physical maneuver. Shelley, would you come here a moment? Now, I'm going to simulate. May I have your hand? Just put it on the abdominal region, what we call diaphragmatic breathing. You can probably see it moving in and out. Now, I'm not breathing at all, right?
Right.
Any difference?
Except for air, no.
Well,
No difference.
the body could lie. The body could lie like crazy. In other words, if you're going by displacement of musculatures, which is a pseudo activity, in other words, you've lied to your body. You've ordered your body to change in order to get the air. If you told the truth, you would have ordered the air into the mouth, and the body would have been under activity of the centers of the brain that control these functions. And you would have had wonderful efficiency, which is very easy to achieve. Now, when I teach this subject, we do it away from music. In other words, when the horn is in the hand, we want the art form dominance. So when we have to do work away from music, we immediately go to, what will I say, sort of a specialized approach in respiration where we bring in multiple senses. The sense of sight through the use of equipment that the breath has to hold a ball in a certain place, or through spirometric equipment. But we teach respiration as a human being studying respiration, not a musician. And once we normalize it as a human being, then we reapply it to the instrument, and it's done with great simplicity, not complexity. If you try to do this while playing, the student gets frustrated, or the person will be frustrated. He's trying to think of the techniques of musculature activity, all sorts of work, and the first thing, music is out of the brain, and I never permit that. I don't want anything to do with the phenomena of playing without the art form dominance. I think it's extremely important. Any questions about what we were just doing? Yes? Well, I do it all the time because I'll show you why. That's 3,450 milliliters, which is the best breath I've had in probably 2 years. It was down to 2,750 milliliters, which is not enough to play a contrabass tuba in a professional organization like the Chicago Symphony, but I lie a lot. I cheat, and I sneak breaths where they shouldn't be, but I do it so fast that nobody knows it. And it's a little bow, so I change it often, and I get by with it. But it's much easier. My breath capacity as a young man was about 4,750 milliliters. I have students, one of them has 7,400 milliliters, just over 7 quarts, where at my best I was under 5. Chester Schmitz, who was here yesterday giving a lecture, I have a spirogram of Chester of, I think, 5,500 milliliters. Roger Bobo, 6,400. And I have never had 5,000 liters, but I had excellence in playing because it's a smaller bow. I just change it when I need to. But I do it based on musical phenomena and good taste and how to phrase and so forth, and I can use the air quite well. Now, I have not done this good. This is the first time I've been up this high since my initial ailment started up. But in losing weight, overweight cuts down on lung volumes. And age cuts down. There's an aging process which you should know about, because when you form your habits, when you're 18 years old like this little lady, the amount of air that you move, or this young man here, the amount of air that you move at that time, there's a signal that goes to the brain on muscle expansion. And the same amount of expansion when you're 20 that will move, we'll say, 4.5 liters or 5 liters. When you're 50, the exact same motions, if you put pneumographs and study the amount of motility and change, you'll find that instead of 5 liters, you've got 4.25 liters. In other words, their throat begins to change, their tongue begins to give you problems. There are all sorts of changes in the playing because you have less air and it moves less freely than when you're young. If you take large general inflations, this doesn't happen. You'll get out of breath a little faster, but you won't stimulate the reflexes on the upper end of the respiratory system. It's dangerous to get out of breath, in other words. It's dangerous to have too little. So it is wonderful to have air to waste, and I teach this. Always waste your breath. Don't make a big deal out of it. Take enough in that you can be comfortable at the end of the phrase. If you can't be comfortable at the end of the phrase, then with good taste, break in and make a subphrase and take a breath. But don't get out of breath. And particularly those of you who are going for auditions, you must make sure that under stress, you will use actually your air up much faster than you would in the conditions of studio playing. You'll find your pulse rate goes up when you're a little stage fright. Respiration becomes a little shallow and rapid. The conditions which you carried it all the way to completion would be hysteria, starts up in a minor way in students or young people waiting for auditions. It's rather an agonizing experience. One of the things you must do to counter that is immediately you start inhaling slow, large breaths. Four counts in, 4 counts out, 5, whatever. But you counter the tendency to have short, rapid breathing by slow, quantitative breathing. This starts to reverse the pulse rate. It starts to normalize the system. It's in psychosomatic aspects of mind-body relationship. So by normalizing the breath, you begin a normalizing pattern in your emotional state as well. Then when you go on the stage to play, you don't start wondering about whether you're going to make it. You don't start thinking, gee, I'm uncomfortable. I felt better at home, or that man played so good. How can I? You sing in your head. You provide powerful stimuli for the conditioned response. The worse you feel, the more musical you get in the brain. For some years, as I've been aging and had illness, going on the stage has been quite difficult for me because medications would dry the saliva, or I would have feelings of great discomfort and so forth due to the illnesses. I don't think I sounded any different at all. My colleagues told me it sounds just like it always did, and sometimes even better. So I say you lie. They make the audience, they say it's great. You know what I mean? And more musical. The worse I would feel, the more I depended on the psychology of playing rather than the feedback of sensory perception of my own body. And I kept getting by through all this time, and I can still play. And what I'm trying to indicate, those of you who are under stress in playing, the way to go is further into music in terms of mentalizing. I frequently will take young people and write out a little phrase, and I make them sing the phrase with words. Then when they play a French horn, or when they play a trombone or a tuba or a trumpet, I make them think of the words and the pitch. I don't let them think of the trumpet. I make them think of the voice. And invariably, there's improvement. But the answers lie not in the study of what goes wrong in tissue, but what controls the tissue. We go through that control panel just like the automobile. We have magnificent controls if we only learn to communicate to our tissues. And the musician communicates to his tissues through the concepts of music that he wants others to hear. This is an important statement because in practicing, you're hearing yourself, and you become the